반갑습니다. 식사 잘 하셨죠? 오전에는 우리 정치인 그리고 기업인, 산업, 경제, 경쟁력 이런 주제로 우리가 오전 회의를 했었는데요. 오후에는 조금 분위기를 바꿔가지고 국제기구, 유네스코, 교육과학 문화, 특히 그 중에서 21세기에 필요한 인재 역량으로서의 세계 시민 의식 이런 주제로 해서 바로 직전 유네스코 사무총장이셨던 이리나 보코바 사무총장님을 모시고 발표와 질문을 하는 그런 시간을 갖도록 하겠습니다. 이리나 보코바 사무총장님은 거의 소개할 필요가 없을 정도로 우리 한국에 널리 알려지신 분이죠. 그렇죠, 그죠? 예. 그 이력서 책에 쭉 보시면 불가리아 출신으로 외교관을 하시고 또 불가리아 내에서 국회의원도 하시고 외무부 장관 역임하시고 유네스코 대사로 나오셔가지고 2009년에 유네스코 사무총장으로 선출되어서 두 텀을 했습니다. 8년 동안 2009년부터 2017년까지 아마 세계가 가장 중요한 역동하는 그런 시기에 사무총장을 하셨고, 한국하고는 굉장히 아주 밀접한 관계를 가지고 있습니다. 워낙 한국을 사랑하셔가지고 1년에 한 번씩 매년 한국을 방문해 주셨고요. 또 월드 휴머니티스 포럼 한국에서 개최하는 그런 회의를 주관하셨고, 또 가장 중요한 것은 2015년 인천에서 월드 에듀케이션 포럼 SDG를 만드는 아주 근간이 되는 그와 같은 회의를 한국에서 개최하도록 적극 밀어주셨고, 그리고 이제 2015년 9월 유엔에서 SDG 17개 목표가 채택되는데 중요한 역할을 하셨습니다. 그래서 제가 아마 여러분도 아시겠지만은 유엔 사무총장 후보로도 가장 강력한 후보로 이렇게 또 꼽히기도 하셨고요. 이제 최근에는 우리 한국하고 인연이 계속 이어져서 경희대학교 휴머니티스 칼리지의 에메리투 석좌 교수로 역할을 또 하고 계시고, 제가 좀 전에 물어보니까 지금 어디에 계시냐고 물어보니까는 먼저 서울, 두 번째 파리와 서울을 왔다 갔다 하시면서 그런 후학들을 위한 중요한 또 역할을 하고 계십니다. 한국을 가장 사랑하는 우리 국제적인 인물이시고, 또 최초의 여성 유네스코 사무총장이셨고, 여성으로서 또 국제적인 국제 정치에서 막강한 역량을 행사하셨던 오늘 이리나 보코바 사무총장님 모시고 특히 SDG 17개 골과 함께 4번의 교육의 중요성, 그리고 교육 중에서 세계 시민교육이 왜 의미가 있는지 그에 대해서 한번 들어보도록 하겠습니다. 큰 박수로 맞아주시기 바랍니다.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chung, for this very kind presentation. We have been working with you for a long time with the National Commission of Korea for UNESCO. And I would say that Korea has been always the greatest champion in the area of education, but not only, I would say in culture and sciences. So I'm very pleased to be here and to attend this global forum. I have made a presentation, and I would ask to make a global overview very briefly about the education and how the future of learning will affect societies, and what, from the point of view of a leader that I was for 8 years of the United Nations agency that was responsible for education, sciences, culture, and communication, and how we were inscribing this into the global agenda of Sustainable Development Goals. Now, we know that in the year 2015, under the leadership of your eminent compatriot, the former Secretary General, Mr. Ban Ki-moon, the United Nations adopted unanimously the 17 development goals. And it gives him an enormous credit to Mr. Ban Ki-moon for the leadership that he has taken, the responsibility, because the 17 development goals are very much part of his legacy. And I have been working very closely with him, with the other colleagues from all of the United Nations system. And if we look around the 17 goals, actually I would say that UNESCO's mandate is so wide that we have relevance to most of these development goals. But of course, goal number 4 was very much the purview of UNESCO. And I would like here to start with the words of the great Nelson Mandela that said that education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. Maybe I need not say this here in Korea because I know how much Korea changed your society, but we're speaking now about the global developments in a globalized world. So in 2015, we convened here in Incheon to adopt, after years of consultations among governments, about civil society, experts, private sector, academia, to adopt and to formulate goal number 4 of the Agenda 2030, which is about promoting inclusive and equitable quality education, and I emphasize quality education, and lifelong learning for all. Also, the new concept that the United Nations described for the first time. And here in Incheon, we adopted a historic declaration that, once again, I emphasize, it runs very deeply into the values of the Korean society. In this declaration, we have emphasized that education is a human right, but it is also important for social cohesion, for social inclusion. It is equally important for gender equality and women's empowerment, and this is where all the SDGs intersect each other. That quality education is also very important for economic growth and prosperity, something also that was emphasized this morning with the Prime Minister of Sweden and others. And it is also equally vital for protecting the planet and all the challenges now that we have around losing of biodiversity or the climate change. And also it is vital for peace and mutual understanding, for living together as global citizens. Peace and mutual understanding, something that is the responsibility where the Asia-Pacific Institute of Education for Mutual Understanding, APSU, here under the auspices of UNESCO, hosted in Seoul, which Dr. Chung is leading. And what were the new, I would say, breakthroughs in this global debate? First, it was that the 12 years of free education for all, there was a big debate whether we should inscribe this as a goal, because we know that with the Millennium Development Goals and all the thinking, I would say, global thinking before that, what that for the developing countries, primary education is enough. And we wanted to shift this perception, because if we have really to look at the global picture, to look at the long term, to look at the quality of education, to look at all the functions of education, definitely we have to have primary and secondary education and free 12 years of learning. Then we put a strong emphasis on teachers, because we know that there is a need for teachers. There is first and foremost lack of teachers worldwide, and we want, but then teachers should be supported, should be well trained. Then we put a strong focus on technical vocational training, quality education, girls' education, global citizenship, and I will be a little bit more into this. As far as the funding, the financing of education, there was a lot of debates, and we know that still the UNESCO Institute of Statistics has identified a gap of 40 billion funding gap, and then we said that countries should invest between 4 and 6, but in terms of gross domestic product, 6% is should be the target of it. And in far as official development assistance, it should really stand at 0.7%. So what are the targets briefly? The first target is by 2030 to ensure that all boys and girls complete free, equitable, and quality primary and secondary education. And what is very important, to look not just at them entering the education cycle, but what are the outcomes. This is a total shift into the understanding about how we measure and how we monitor education. On the other side, it is the indicators that we have also elaborated in the meantime, because every target has to have an indicator. The second is that early childhood development is a new concept. For the first time also, we inscribed it as a target that early childhood care and education is vital for human development, for the learning, and further on. Then the third is about technical and vocational training and tertiary education, universities. And if you notice, it's equal access for women and men, because we know there is a gap. When we speak about technical vocational training in many countries, boys go, but women and girls do not enter this cycle. Then we have also the skills, employment, jobs, entrepreneurship, very much linked also to the preceding target, which was also important. Then we have number 5, it is the gender disparities in education, I would say wider, and if I may say, also looking at people with disabilities, the vulnerable, the indigenous population, I would say children in vulnerable situation. This is also very important that we look at those people that do not have this access. Then it is about literacy, because still we know that in the world there are around 800 million people, illiterate people, and with the poor quality of education in some countries, some children, albeit they have been through the primary education, they become functionally literate. So we still have to continue this fight against illiteracy. And here for the first time, we also mentioned numeracy, because nowadays, in order to be literate, in order to benefit from education and learning, of course, you have to know numeracy. And goal number 7, which is very important, and then I will elaborate more on that, the target, it is about knowledge, skills, need to promote sustainable development, including through education for sustainable development, another big area of new, I would say, focus of education, sustainable lifestyles, human rights, gender equality, promotion of culture of peace and nonviolence, global citizenship, cultural diversity, and also culture's contribution to sustainable development. I think this is exactly what also the Prime Minister was speaking this morning when he was speaking about how to prepare young people for the globalization and disruptive environments and societies, which needs a different type of skills also nowadays. And then there were a couple of additions which were slightly adding, I would say, to the others about the upgrade education facilities, making them more sensitive. And this is about developing countries, how to develop scholarships, how to support also the developing countries into this very complex process, because we know that developed and middle-income countries, although middle-income countries have huge, I would say, disparities and inequalities in terms of education, so we have to support the least developed countries. And the last, of course, once again, we put a very strong emphasis on teachers, because we think that teachers are key to this reform process and to the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goal number 4. Now, goal number 4 is regularly monitored, it's regularly looked after. We have meetings in the United Nations constantly. I just wanted briefly to show that as other goals, this goal number 4 is particularly a focus on this. In fact, one of the first meetings of the Sustainable Development Forum was dedicated to education. So, what are these global challenges that require really from us also a different approach in terms of education? Of course, it is about the rapid development of technologies. We know this. We spoke this morning about it. It is the different types of economies that we are living through. It is the greater migration among countries and within countries. We know that this is very much linked to another goal, goal number 11, about urban cities, urban development, sustainability. It is the growing inequalities. Many of the questions this morning were also tackling the issues about inequalities and what actually education can bring to that. It is about overall sustainable development, this new concept that is promoted by Agenda 2030, and what is actually sustainable development. Sustainable development is about putting the dots together between the economic, the social, and the environmental impact and developments in this world, and that nothing can be solved if you look only on the economic or only on the social, environmental. So putting this together to work together will bring sustainability, and also it's the demographics. The Prime Minister today spoke also about globally about demographics, but particularly the youth demographics, because we know that there are countries where 60% of the citizens, or even more, reaching out to 70%, are people below the age of 30. So we think that global citizenship education is a response to these global challenges into an interconnected and globalized world. So we asked our questions: what education for the 21st century? What the purpose of education in these societies, which we call with the disruptive economies? What education in era of interconnect? What education in the fourth industrial revolution? If you go back, there was a famous Brazilian educator, Paulo Freire, who said that education is the practice of freedom, where men and women deal critically and creatively with reality and discover how to participate into the transformation of their world. I think these words that were said some decades ago are very relevant nowadays, when we really have to teach young people new skills, not just technical skills, but new skills to deal with this globalized world. New values, knowledge about peace, sustainable development, human rights, democracy, how to transform this into daily behaviors of tolerance and respect. And in this, briefly, there were two UNESCO major reports. This is the first report in '72, the '4 report, which was introducing the ideas of lifelong learning, the learning societies, very early on, that later were integrated. And it said that lifelong education is the master concept for education policies. And the second, which was more recent, it is the Delors report, which is still very relevant, although we see new ideas coming, which was called Learning, the Treasure Within, and it was based on 4 pillars. These 4 pillars are learning to be, learning to know, learning to do, and learning to live together. So this is where also this report is still very meaningful, saying that the principle means to foster a deeper and more harmonious form of human development, and thereby to reduce poverty, exclusion, oppression, and war. So when Mr. Ban Ki-moon proposed in 2013, 2012 and 2013, supported by UNESCO, Education First initiative, it was exactly where the Global Education Initiative came into the public space. We picked it up from there, and then we started to elaborate more as to what are the elements of this global citizenship education. It was linked to the 2 main objectives of the global community, United Nations, about peace, about sustainable development, the 2 sides, and also to say that nowadays, in a world that is so much interconnected, and sometimes they go beyond the national borders, we have to have some kind of a responsibility towards each other into this globalized world. And that is why we said that education is not just a technical way of transferring knowledge. Nowadays, knowledge is everywhere. It is not about memorizing. It's a different way of learning. But it is about values. It is about the values of living together, of human rights, of human dignity, and that we have to go beyond numeracy and literacy in order to acquire these different learning environments. And I think on the basis of this kind of a vision for education for global citizenship, we were trying really to shift the paradigm, I would say, of education nowadays. We really need to look globally as to what is happening in the world and how we make this world more tolerant, more respectful, how we look also at the sustainability. I think this is the key word in this particular case, and how we acquire this critical thinking about events and everything that is happening in the world, so that citizens really become responsible citizens. They take informed decisions, be it about politics, about climate, about their own lives, about the economy, about the social issues. So on different levels, we start to work more elaborate, go deeper. I would like here that to say that the link between the global citizenship education and education for sustainable development is very important. It is the first stage. There was a decade until 2014 that was leading towards a higher, I would say, level of understanding nowadays of the challenges. Education for sustainable development was integrated into the global citizenship education. We had a big program of ESD in action. I'm afraid we don't have time to look more into details into this program. I just wanted to flag it out. But I would like just to say that nowadays I believe that global citizenship education is a challenge, but it is also a response to the challenges that exist nowadays in the world. Still, there is a lot of thinking into this. I would like particularly to emphasize the role of APSIU, because I think APSIU here, the Asia-Pacific Center for Education for International Understanding, and globally Korea is taking the lead into the thinking about global citizenship education, how it is integrated into curricular, what kind of teacher training, what kind of a local response, because one size does not fit all, what kind of local response it has to be there. And I believe that the interest, I would say, that has been stirred by the work of the APSIU in different parts of the world, because it's a global center under the auspices of UNESCO, is bringing today, is really something that has to be commended. So I would like to say once again that it is an opportunity, it is an answer also to a world under pressure, and I tend to think that global citizenship education is the bedrock of sustainability. So thank you for your attention.
And thank you very much, Madam Irina Bokova. Very precise and very comprehensive presentation on SDG, especially SDG 4. We have 17 minutes, so I have two questions directed to you, and then I will open to our participant to open to the floor. So first question is, what do you think the relationship or the linkage between global citizenship education and SDG 4 or overall SDG goals? How to achieve SDG goals? Global citizenship education, how can global citizenship education can contribute to achieve these SDG goals?
Well, I think what is most important here to say that education really is the foundation I would say, not just of human development, but also of all the other efforts in the 17 development goals. First and foremost, we know that all the 17 goals are very much interconnected. You cannot take them in silos. You cannot solve the problem of biodiversity without having education for sustainable development. You can't solve the problem of gender equality and women's empowerment if you don't have girls in schools, or if you don't encourage girls to go into the STEM education and to pursue other careers. And I can continue this list of very interconnected. But I would say that education, albeit for us and for Korea, is so obvious that education has brought Korea from a country devastated after the war with enormous challenges to the country that has received international aid and from the United Nations into the cutting-edge technology and into a developed country that nowadays is member of OECD and also is one of the, I would say, most advanced technologically countries. It was thanks to education that this was achieved. But it has not always been like that. Even in the conference of the United Nations in 2012, the Rio +20 conference, if you look at the final document, education took very small part of it. It was kind of a mission which was nearing, I would say, to huge neglect of something so important for many countries. So that is why I believe now goal number 4 is well established, it's well thought of, it's very well measured in terms of how to be integrated to international policies. But what is very important, and I think this is where education for global citizenship come into the picture, it is really the bigger framework of what education and learning brings to human development. Because without education for global citizenship, you don't have the 3 elements of sustainability. You can't have the, I would say, the issues of solving the issues of climate change, because it is through our knowledge about changing our behaviors, changing our consumption. And this should start at the benches of schools. Without knowing in multicultural societies about histories, about cultural literacy, as we say, about tolerance, about empathy in very many of societies, about solidarity, you can't have inclusiveness in societies equally. So it's this bigger framework of human behavior that is, I would say, supported by education for global citizenship. So it is not by chance that after the adoption of the Sustainable Development Goals, immediately in 2016, the President of the General Assembly of the United Nations at that time, Mr. Peter Thompson, the first special event that he organized of the General Assembly dedicated to the SDGs was on education and the SDGs. This is of paramount importance.
Thank you very much. My second question is, this is Korea, Korean Peninsula, and today there's a reconciliation between North and South Korea. Global Citizenship Education, do you believe GCED, Global Citizenship Education, can contribute to peaceful negotiation and reconciliation of the Korean Peninsula between North and South Korea?
Well, I, like many people, I think millions of people in the world, is following and watching with a lot of hope the inter-Korean dialogue relations, and I would say the global setting, meetings among different leaders from different parts of the world, because we think this last, I would say, a legacy of the Cold War, which has brought so much suffering to the Korean people, should be resolved. And in this case, I also believe that education plays a role, educating young Koreans, both North and South, about their common history, I would say, because at the end of the day, it's one people with a joint history. I am very proud that during my tenure at UNESCO, we have been working a lot in the protection of heritage, both in the North and in the South. In the North, the Koguryo tombs, which are part of the described on the World Heritage List, part of the joint legacy and heritage of the Korean people, with the support of the Republic of Korea, financial support. And also, I think now that we hope this opening will give a lot more of exchange between Korean young people from the north, from the south. There will be universities exchange, other exchange, that these issues about living together, about how we respect each other, and what is our common roots and our common heritage, and how to reconcile are very important. And I do believe that education is critical. Like education nowadays, we see in many countries where there is a rising extremism. We know, unfortunately, there are xenophobic views, extremism rising. We think that the prevention is very important, and it starts on the benches of schools, of how, because I always say that nobody has been born racist or extremist or anti-Semite, and these people then are fueled. And we have on the benches of school to look at the curricula, to look at the teacher training as how we make these societies peaceful and more harmonious. Something that also APSIU is doing nowadays in many parts of the world.
Yeah. Thank you very much. There's two questions from participants. Number one is, Madam Irina Bokova, you love Korea, and then please give advice to our young generation of Korea in terms of global citizenship perspective to young generation of Korea.
Well, I don't dare give. I think young Koreans, and Korea is very much globalized nowadays in the world, and I'm always fascinated because I stay in Kyungshu University, but I have been in very many others, in Yonsei, in Hanyang, Kiwa, and I will continue visiting other universities, exchanging with students. I'm always very pleasantly surprised about the level of understanding and not just curiosity about the world, but I would say the level of responsibility of young Koreans when they speak about inequalities in the world, or where they engage in some other project. I think they're also overall support of international multilateralism is very, very marked nowadays, when we need to support multilateralism in the United Nations. And I have worked at UNESCO also with very many young Koreans in different parts of the world, in different offices. I think if there is something, is also, if I may say, as an advice, to be bolder, to take also some more responsibilities towards the others, to have this strong sense, to continue having this strong sense of solidarity and empathy, which I believe is a mark of Korea nowadays.
Okay, thank you. Second question from Flo. Global citizenship education teach tolerance, inclusiveness, peace, and such values. But in the classroom, it's very, very difficult to promote those values, to teach all those values. What is most effective ways to teach all those tolerance and inclusiveness and openness of the students? Do you have any pedagogical, contents or pedagogy on this global citizenship education?
Well, I think you could answer better this question because APSIU has been very much into curricular development. But let me say from my experience at UNESCO and from talking to our experts, both in the Special International Bureau of Education, that I think there are two important aspects. First, of course, it's curricular. And I think in curricular, in many education systems, either humanities have been sidelined, questions about ethics, questions about human rights, questions about overall civic education have been largely sidelined. And I think we have to bring back this strong link with humanities, sometimes with arts. I know in very many settings, in universities, but not only, already the link between sciences, humanities, arts is becoming closer because sometimes we know that a book can open a young mind and humanities can bring children to a different world, the imagination. Even we want to stir creativity nowadays, but how we stir this creativity? I think when young people imagine that there can be other, better world and how to change this world, I think this is very important. Teachers are critical into this. I insist very much because sometimes we tend to think that technologies are the solution. I think technologies have limits. Of course, technologies can help immensely into broadening the spectrum of access to knowledge. But when a young student enters into this space, he needs guidance. It's a totally different world. He needs somebody to guide. He needs somebody to also make him, instill in him some kind of a value system. Now we speak about critical thinking, but we need those teachers, those mentors, I would say, who will guide into this area. So I think teachers are very critical into this process and how to prepare them, because for them, I would say it's more responsibilities, it's more burden. We expect from them more, but we have to support them more.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I will add one more. Yesterday, having dinner with her, this teacher education for global citizens education, teacher training, teacher education is most important part. That's why I propose her. UNESCO should initiate to establish kinds of UNESCO College of Education or UNESCO Academy of Education or UNESCO University on global citizens education, because my center plays such a role, but the training course is only 1 week or 10 days. The longest one is 2 months. 2 months is not enough. If we have a diploma course, 1 year, 2 years, or the MA or PhD course, we can produce so many teachers or key leading teachers to the world. So
maybe
I propose.
Korea. Maybe Korea could take this initiative.
Thank you, thank you.
It's a wonderful initiative.
And one very, very difficult question from the audience. You mentioned about role and function of global citizens education between South and North Korea. But Korean, one question. Korea and Japan also very, very difficult in this time. Global citizens education, how global citizens education contribute to this relationship between Korea and Japan or Korea and China? Yes.
Well, I think it's indeed a difficult question, and it relates to history. It relates also to kind of a joint reading of history, of textbooks. The ideal situation is when countries can come together and write joint textbooks, like France and Germany have done it. And I come from a region where, as Churchill once said, the Balkans, there is too much history on the Balkans. And what I did, and I'm very proud of it, I did an exhibition at UNESCO, and then it became a traveling exhibition around the Balkan countries, which was imagining the Balkans. It was based on a book by a Bulgarian-American historian, Maria Ivanova, who was just looking not at what divides, but the commonalities in the history of all these countries. And it turned out that the commonalities are so big that everybody could recognize into this. And let's to look at the history at what unites indeed these countries, and then gradually solve the problems. Of course, I know that it's difficult. It needs also political will to do it. And I hope that also countries here in the region will come to this stage.
Thank you. Only 2 minutes left. So in this time, I will get a direct question from the audience. Please raise your hands. The third row. Yeah. Please identify yourself. Yeah.
안녕하세요. 저는 부산 유락여자중학교에 다니는 중학교 2학년 정자윤입니다. 이리나 보코나님 강연을 굉장히 재밌게 들었습니다. 저도 사실 유엔에서 일하는 게 꿈이라서 굉장히 흥미있었습니다. 제가 드리고 싶은 질문은 교사의 질을 높이는 것이 중요하다고 하셨는데 교사의 질을 높이기 위해서는 많은 연수와 실질적인 교육이 필요하고 그에는 많은 돈과 시간이 필요합니다. 교육에 사용되는 예산을 늘리면 다른 부분에서 펑크가 날 수도 있고 사실 많은 선생님들께서 추가 교육을 원하시지는 않을 것 같습니다. 이러한 현실적인 문제들은 어떻게 대처를 해야 하나요?
I think this is a question to your Minister of Finance, who's preparing maybe the next budget or the others. But I think in Korea, teachers are supported and teachers are very much respected because you respect education, of course. But you know, I think that countries that have advanced most, and this is the study of the United Nations Development Program since the 90s when they started preparing the human development reports, because there is a big debate nowadays about how you measure advance and progress in your society, whether it's only by GDP per capita, the classical way. Now everybody is moving away from it. Even the World Bank, the OECD, and other. This was the first by the United Nations, and UNESCO also participated in the preparation of this Human Development Report. And there it's that countries advanced most, those are the ones that invested in health, in education. And I think Korea also is such example. Of course, you have to balance your development always, but teachers should not be at the lower level, definitely.
Thank you very much. 아마 질문들이 많이 있을 것 같은데 시간이 다 되어가지고 좀 아쉽지만 이걸로 마무리를 해야 될 것 같습니다. 마무리하기 전에 한마디 말씀드리면 세계시민교육은 대한민국이 역사상 처음으로 글로벌 아젠다에 우리가 주도해서 넣은 아주 자랑스러운 목표입니다. 그래서 세계시민교육하면 우리 모든 대한민국 국민들은 오너십, 주인의식을 가지고 적극적으로 이걸 밀고 또 전 세계에 전파하도록 그렇게 해야 될 것 같습니다. 그 과정에서 가장 큰 역할을 해주신 분이 마담 이리나 보코바 사무총장입니다. 큰 박수로 마무리를 하겠습니다.
Thank you.